When life seems full of clouds and rain, and I'm full of nothing but pain, who soothes my thumping, bumping brain? Nobody. When wintertime comes with its snow and sleet, and me with hunger and cold feet, who says here's 2 bits, go and eat? Nobody. Well, I ain't never done nothing to nobody. I ain't got forgot nothing from nobody, no time, and until I get something from somebody. Sometime I don't intend to do nothing for nobody, no time. When summertime comes, all warm and clear, and my friends see me drawing near, who says, come on in and have a beer? Nobody. Well, one time when things was looking bright, I started to whittling on a stick one night. Who said, hey, that's dynamite? Nobody. I ain't never done nothing to nobody. I ain't never got nothing from nobody, no time, and until I get something from somebody, sometime I don't intend to do nothing for nobody, no time. I ain't never done nothing to nobody. I ain't never got nothing from nobody, no time, and until I get something from somebody, sometime I don't intend to do nothing for nobody, no time.
Good evening all, good evening all, good evening all. Well, good evening, Aldi McKeldy. Good evening, Andy, Bonnie, Captain Stingray, C. Gillers, Freeman, Jack Haggis, Magus, Hugh, James Swagger, John McCann, Johnny Meath, John McHugh, Kent Anderson, Kieran McMahon, Lee, Mahatma Coat, Neil Callahan, Neon Machine, Pat Veldon, Ray Vaughan, Reverend Rashers, Richard Fields, RJS1, Seacatch, Sitek, McTira, Stuart, Sugar 2, Sumi Knees, Super Big Badman, T.I., Timfromtang, that's myself, Tom Ewing, UK Prepper, and Vin. Hello, all of you. How are you? I am sure there are other listeners out there too. I'm very pleased to be talking to you. Today, I want to sing the praises of Wales. Leviathan. Upon earth there is not his like, who is made without fear. Will he speak soft words unto thee? Job 41. From space the planet is blue. From space the planet is the territory, not of humans, but of the whale. Blue seas cover 7/10 of the Earth's surface and are the domain of the largest brain ever created, with a 50 million year old smile. I should tell you where I'm coming from with this little show this evening. I have in my hands a piece of writing by a gentleman called Heathcote Williams entitled Whale Nation, which is really much of the source for my praise for Wales this evening. I'm just going to go ahead and play you 3 minutes and 35 seconds of Wales song Put up with it. Here it comes. Okay, well that's enough of that whale noise, right? That's enough of those whale noises. So I was going to read this poem because I picked up this book the other evening and I sat down through it and I was very, very moved. And yes, it is a very sad sound. So from space, the planet is blue. From space, the planet is the territory not of humans but of the whale. Blue seas cover 7/10 of the Earth's surface and are the domain of the largest brain ever created, with a 50-million-year-old smile. Ancient unknown mammals left the land in search of food or sanctuary and walked into their water. Their arms and hands changed into water wings. I'll pause here to mention that whales are creatures that have left and returned to the sea during their evolution. Originally, they would have come out of the sea and became a kind of land-based life form, rather like a hippo. And then at some point, the hippo-like life form, which found its food in water, returned to the sea. And the whale evolved back into a marine animal. But this time, it is a lactating animal, produces milk. They mind their babies, and their brains are much bigger than ours. To return, Their tails turn into boomerang-shaped tail flukes, enabling them to fly almost weightless through the oceans. Their hind legs disappeared, buried deep within their flanks. Free from land-based pressures, free from droughts, earthquakes, ice ages, volcanoes and famine. Larger brains evolved. 10 times as old as man's. Other creatures with a larger cerebral cortex. Luxuriantly folded, intricately fissured, deep down in another country, moving at a different tempo. And the whale's lips formed their distant humorous curl when we were eating clawed, when we were clawed quadrupeds. I'm getting all tangled up here. It is really, really hot. Insect-eating shrews, feverishly scrabbling at the bark of trees. Whales play in an amniotic paradise. Their light minds shaped by buoyancy, unrestricted by gravity, somersaulting like angels or birds, like our own lives in the womb. So, these whale creatures, they're older than us. Much, much older. Their brains are bigger than ours. Much, much bigger. They use a language like ours. Much, much more sophisticated. And we kill them. Still, we kill. It's sad. It's so, so sad. Here's a little bit of stuff I found about why people should act a little bit more like whales.
I'm a whale. Not to brag, but my brain is really, really big.
And I'm a human. My brain is really big too. In fact, us humans are so smart we can drive around in climate-controlled automobiles talking to each other on smartphones from hundreds of miles away while eating food that we didn't have to hunt ourselves on the way to our comfortable homes we didn't even build ourselves.
Well, okay. We don't really have cars or stuff like that, and we do have to hunt for our food, so that's kind of a bummer. But we also don't drop bombs on each other or poison each other with chemicals or use up all the resources on the whole planet.
Whoa, you didn't have to get so personal.
I'm sorry, that was rude of me. I just think you can't really judge intelligence by technology alone. After all, what is the wisdom of destroying the very planet you need to survive? I don't want to be pushy or overly sensitive, but I think humans could really learn something from us whales.
Alright, I got a little bit of free time here in between my Facebook updates, my Twitter feeds, my blog posts, my downloads.
Okay, well, whales are part of the order Cetacea. This includes all whales, dolphins, and porpoises. The name Cetacea comes from the Greek ketos, meaning large fish or sea monster. There are many types of cetaceans: the humpback whale, blue whale, right whale, bowhead whale, bottlenose dolphin, narwhale, gray whale, orca, spinner dolphin, pilot whale, beluga, harbor porpoise, spectacled porpoise, and of course the great sperm whale, which was hunted for its oil throughout the 18th and 19th and even 20th centuries.
I'm sorry about the whaling.
Have you read Moby Dick?
Well, I started it, but...
It's okay. I'm told that no human can read the whole thing. Anyways, we understand what you guys are going through because we used to live on land too. Millions of years ago we had hooves and walked around and we were more or less hippos. Finding more food in the sea than on land, we slowly ventured further out into the water, and through the magic of evolution, certain genetic traits were selected naturally. Goodbye, hind legs. Our bodies became longer and more streamlined. Us cetaceans have lungs for breathing air, give birth, we nurse our young, and we live in family units. You know, we're really not so different, you and I. We both have big brains, a good sense of humor. We like going on vacation in Hawaii.
Definitely.
We share something else, too. Something more elemental. Deep within both our brains lies an electrically charged cell that processes and transmits information. This is called a neuron. And deep within the anterior cingulate cortex of these big brains is a neuron known as a spindle neuron. This is the neuron that is responsible for compassion and understanding, as well as pitch with regard to sound and song. You humans like music, don't you?
Yeah, my iPod's on shuffle right now. I've got about 4,000 songs in this one. Mumford Sons, Fleet Foxes.
Anyways, the fact that both humans and cetaceans make music seems to be the most powerful of all the similarities between our two species. Music is not only a form of communication or entertainment, it's more mystical and unexplainable than that. It's the harnessing of energy waves in a certain frequency range and the organization of that energy into sounds. As Plato said, rhythm and harmony find their way into the inner places of the soul. I think that if humans sang as much as us whales, they could resolve many of the issues that plague them now. I'm not saying the world would turn around overnight, but the beginning of a new consciousness might emerge and allow for drastically different approaches to all issues confronting the human race. Think if wars were resolved through music or long-form song poems explaining the grievances of both sides, let alone the positive impact it could have on interpersonal relationships and conflict resolution on a local or family level.
Actually, I do feel a lot more relaxed when I'm listening to music.
You should really try to actually have a conversation with someone through song and music alone.
All right, I'll try it.
I'm not saying you humans need to grow fins and move to the ocean. Just try and sing more. Learn the song of the spindle. Not only will it sound wonderful, it just might save the world.
Wow. Well. Whales play. For 3 times as long as they spend searching for food, whales play. Delicate, involved games. With floating seabirds' feathers blown high in the air and logs of wood, flipped from the tops of their heads, carried in their teeth, for a game of tag ranging across the entire Pacific. Play without goals. So I'm sure at this stage, some of you are wondering, what on earth is he going on about whales for? Why am I going on about whales? Well, quite apart from the fact of their enormous brain and their wonderful sophisticated language and their beauty, and the fact that they're very much under threat from human activity, quite apart from those reasons, not very many people know this, as far as I understand, but it is my understanding that we would not have our current high-technology industrial civilization were it not for the whale. In fact, the whale was the foundation of the entire industrial revolution, it could be argued. The list of products that come in the industrial revolution at the start that were only available from whales is absolutely extraordinary. I'm just having a little leaf through my book here so that I can perhaps find it in time. I should, of course, if I was the kind of a lad who was being prepared and such, I might have had a bookmark or something. And I might even have bookmarked the page when I was reading it. That would have made sense, of course, but, well, I'm a bit wild, you see, and these bits of paper and me, they don't get on too well together. So we struggle along with the civilization, and every time I come in contact with it, I just get a little bit wilder. But hey, I'm not finding it. I'll find it a bit later on as we go through the show. Perhaps I'll play a song or two. But I'm not going to read the whole of this poem because it's some couple of 100 pages long and full of the most, well, here we go, I'll have a bit more. So our whale is just another commodity. Yes, indeed. That is very much what the whale is and was as far as the fiction, the civilization, sees things. Now, there have always been humans who have not seen whales in this way. There's always been opposition to there's always been opposition to the harvesting of whales. There's always been folk who have been appalled, absolutely appalled by the slaughter, appalled at the destruction of such a wonderful beast. And well, there are those of you out there who think that that humans are somehow some kind of a special animal. You're not a special animal. There are no special animals. All animals need all other animals if we're all going to live here together. There are no special animals. And I'll be damned if we even we think we're clever. We ain't the bloody cleverest, far from it. These whale boys, do you know what? These cetaceans, these wonderful air-breathing, sea-swimming beings who can weigh, well, put it this way. A blue whale can lose as much weight during the nursing of her calf. She can lose an equivalent weight as during the nursing of her calf as the biggest dinosaur that ever lived weighed. A blue whale may lose up to 50 tons of body weight while she's nursing her calf. And there is no dinosaur that weighed heavier than that, as far as I understand. I found this place in my little bit of a book, but well, I'll tell you a little bit more about me and the whales. You see, I'm not a seagoing sort of a lad, I live in the middle of the countryside. I live in the middle of the country and the middle of the land. I'm not a man of the sea. And yet, the whale has always attracted me. I've seen one once, but just once. And from a far distance. And it didn't really look like I was told that was a whale, and that's really all I could see. But lots of photographs I've seen, and lots of stories. Lots and lots of stories. So we'll carry on now with the... These are the things that caused us to slaughter the whales expressed in poetry. But other men have elected to view the whale as an essential component of an expanding economy. When an underwater shape is detected on the submarine radar, catcher boats are dispatched from the factory ship. The harpoon on the raised foredeck is manned and swivelled in the direction of the whale. As the whale comes within range, the engine's screw is slowed down and then silenced. An accurate shot lands between the shoulder blades. An inaccurate shot is followed by 2 or 3 more. At the end of the 5-foot-long steel harpoon, a small serrated cup presents ricochet. The tip strikes, followed by a time-fused charge exploding 3 seconds later. I may have just got a little bit louder. Splinting and lacerating the harpoon's way into the whale's side. Next to the grenade, 4 barbed flanges pivot on hinges. As the whale struggles, the strain on the rope snaps the barbs open. They fly out, ripping into lungs and inner organs, embedding the harpoon inside the whale, anchoring her body. The whale clashes her jaws together, pants, flurries and spurts blood raspingly through her blowhole. She thrashes her tail against the surface, strenuously heaving at the 6-inch thick nylon line. Attached to accumulator springs in the catcher boat's hold, designed to buffer every move. Just going to answer a question in the chat box. What is a flange? Well, I suggest my answer to what is a flange is simple. If you can use the chat box, you can use Google. Please do so. 20 minutes pass. The whale's ribs become too heavy to move. The whale's rib muscles give up their strength. The air valves collapse, admitting a rush of seawater. The whale's lungs flood. She suffocates and dies, revolving slowly in the water, leaving her white stomach exposed. A hollow lance attached to an airline is fired at her upturned belly, feeding compressed air into her corpse to inflate it to keep it afloat. An identifying flag with a radar, a reflector and a catcher boat's number is lobbed onto her. She's left to drift, rimmed with oil slick and blood. With no enemies in the sea, the whale is loth to believe in the attack, as were the Indians, as were the Aborigines, and as both still are today. The factory ship, as large as an aircraft carrier with the capacity to deal with a whale every 30 minutes, draws alongside. A hole is bored into the nearest end of her body, lips her tail, a tow line is attached, and she is hauled to the bottom of the ramp. I too love whales, and that is why I am expressing this stream of consciousness today. It's why I have no patience for men who don't understand what a flange is and won't go and look. A set of moving claws is lowered towards her. The hawser wire is pulled. The curved metal fingers of the metal tongs bite. The whale is inched up the slope onto the flensing deck. Wearing spiked plates on their boots to pin themselves to the body, the flensing crew, armed with long-handled knives, slice into the whale, scoring huge straps 18 inches wide and 10 foot long. Wires are looped around the ends of the loose flesh, and winches tear it from the whale's side. The whale is stuffed through manholes to be carved into a sodden mess by whirring knives that lie below in rotating drums. This is our civilization, folks. This is what we do. We make machines that murder. We make machines that slice and machines that kill. We don't have to be like that. Yes, T.I., I know you weren't being funny with that question, and the flange really is not an important part of the poem. I shouldn't worry about what a flange is. It's often a bit of metal that sticks out round the edge of a pipe or something like that. Or anyway, so the minced flesh is shunted into digester tanks. Do you know, I don't think I can bear any more of this. And I'm just going to leave the bit because they explain about what happens to the skull, the jaw, the bones, the ribs, what happens to pregnant whales, what happens to the unborn of pregnant whales, what they do with the inner organs, what they do with the skin and the belly blubber and the jaw cartilage and the tail flukes. The floating factory has done little but to exchange 20,000 gallons of petroleum for 20,000 gallons of animal oil, and foreign currency has been acquired. Isn't that nice? Everyone gets a bit of money. Oh, and we get to dig up a million-year-old poison and burn it so that we can do it. And we can have this wonderful animal oil. No whale has ever been found suffering from cancerous tumours. This fact is overlooked. The odd fact that no whale has been found with a serious pathological disease is also overlooked. Yet civilization was built on the back of the whale. Coastal settlements followed the presence of the whales. Shore stations near the whaling grounds became cities. Boston, New York, Plymouth, Tokyo, Leningrad, Vladivostok, Lisbon, Bergen, Brest, Odessa, Yokohama, San Francisco, Reykjavik, Valdivia, San Pedro, Vancouver, Sydney, Durban, Rotterdam, Whitby, Hull, Darwin, Buenos Aires, Hobart, Wellington, Auckland, Helsinki, Seoul, Murmansk, Manila, Valparaiso, Glasgow, Dundee, Philadelphia, Liverpool. Need I go on? Urban conglomerations plugged into the corpse of the whale, growing larger and larger by its light. The whale's insulating wet suits hacked off in flensing ships in untold billions, for fuel, for lamps, and candle wax to turn night into day. For whale oil appliances for sweatshops and factories, for domestic lighting, for street lighting, for shop lighting. I could have gone on and included Skegness, but hey, for flexible baleen filaments for watch springs, umbrellas, toys and upholstery. Even the springs in the first typewriter. Millions and millions and millions of minds died in a marine holocaust, generating the implacable human appetite for electricity, petroleum, and plastic. For soap to be returned mixed with dirt into the sea. For margarine, for glycerol, for lipstick in the idle fantasy world of beauticians. For detergents, from whose froth modern advertising was spawned. For glycerin, for nitroglycerin, to blow a hole in the human herd. For brushes and brooms, for linoleum, for medical trusses. For oilcloth, for sausage skins, for drum skins, for sword hilts and scabbards, for laces, for surgical stitches, for tennis racket strings. For riding crops, for chessmen, for buttons, for tanning leather, for artists' pigments, wax crayons, engineering coolants, golf bags. As some of you may know, I have worked in the past as a mechanical engineer, and I'm supposedly qualified in that regard as well. And the engineering coolants from Wales are interesting because there is neither any synthetic substance nor any petroleum-based substance that is in any way superior or even sufficient to replace the engineering coolants that were taken from Wales. For varnishes, for parchment, for printing inks, for insecticide, for calcium for blanco and military purification, for calcium for fertilizer to speed up the gestation of the earth, for the jute industry, for the wool industry, for the shoe industry, for the cotton industry, for tempering steel. Without the bloodletting of the whale, prime source of light and lubrication, the Industrial Revolution would have been scantily equipped. A spectral colossus haunts the inflated myth of progress, so keen to brush aside its hidden costs in the cause of pure profit, so forgetful in the bright name of novelty. For paint, for skin cream, for stock cubes, for cattle fencing, for mahjong counters, for iodine, for endocrinal hormones for those stiffened by arthritis, for liver oil and vitamins to treat those who are flagging, for insulin from the pancreas to treat those whose blood is too sweet, for gelatin for the coating of photographic film, with which we see ourselves as we see ourselves incessantly. For gelatin, for the transparent capsules of pills, for jelly, for glue, for stays and gussets, and busks and bodices, and statuesque corsetry, emphasizing the breasts and hips, the aesthetic apparatus, the sensual sustenance of empire building. For fish bait, for cattle meal, for the food supplies to fur farms, for dog food, for cat food, for the fermentation process in the manufacture of antibiotics, for oiling the automatic transmission systems of automobiles, for antifreeze for low-calorie cooking fat, for shortening for bread and pastry and cakes, for hair treatments, for bath essence, and on and on and on we go. For plasticizer, for fishing rods, for machine oil, ambergris. This sullen killing continues even to this day. And I've often said in the past on A New Leaf that I believe that very much about our civilization is really, really wrong. And when we start to look at these beautiful animals with bigger brains than ours, much more sophisticated, who occupy 7/10 of the surface of the world, and once occupied it in their teeming, thriving millions prior to our last 200 years of supposed wonderful technological expansion. We just kill them all to build something that can't last, made out of plastic, made in China. Now, MSI Radio is supposed to be about solutions. Solutions. Well, how do we go about solving something like that one? Where are we going to go with that? It's overwhelming, is what I find it. So, here we have our Industrial Revolution, built on the foundation of the mass murder of minds, which I suggest it is extraordinarily likely that those minds are immeasurably superior to ours. They have the same folded structure. They have the same kinds of neurons. They are capable of music. They are capable of empathy. Their brains are much bigger than ours, and they have had those big brains for much, much longer than we have had them. So where then shall we see our solution lie? Tell you what, let's look in the wild, will we? Well, that's a problem, isn't it? Because the whales, they came from the wild, didn't they? Oh, they're living in the wild. Perhaps, we should move into the wild with the whales and step away from this facile thing based on fashion and control and rulers. I'm just going to have a little look. Stop your bloody wailing, indeed. Well, you can take the mick all you want. I wasn't reading it. I'm only going to read it now. Accumulated barred karma over the millennia. Whatever we do, it will have harmful effects. Yes. However, there is something that we can do. If in doubt, do nothing. I reject absolutely being a part of a civilization which is founded on the basis of the murder of these millions and millions of beautiful minds that once teemed in our ocean and thrived and flourished together. Now, it's easy enough to do today as I sit here in me skin and me boxer shorts in front of the computer because I'm so hot. It's a hard thing to do, really. To give up the sewing machine and the motor car. But at the moment I wish to do so. I'm appalled by the knowledge that our civilization, our structure, everything, it's all founded on this mass murder. And of course, there've been lots of other hosts talking about this kind of thing, but generally they've been talking about the mass murder of of human animals and not cetacean animals. I'm just going to pause for a moment and light my cigarette, if you don't mind. And we're back with a deep inhale. Hey, how's that going? Good stuff. So, solutions. We've got this civilization thing. And quite apart from all the other problems that we already know about that are presented by it, the problems of the existence of these supposed statutes and things that apparently we're supposed to be bound by, because we apparently don't choose to do everything we do. Apparently. Now, I personally choose to do everything I do. And, I'm afraid I wish to choose to use nothing which is based on the murder of cetaceans. I just think it's so foolish. So short-sighted. So incredibly selfish. so extraordinarily unenlightened. I've got myself all depressed, and I'm in a terrible place now. I need to play something to cheer myself up.
Honey, if the truth hurts, don't look, it might go away. It's easy to pretend that life is a rosy bouquet. I don't need a platter, I'll take it straight from the shelf. Give it to me raw, I'll take it home, cook it myself. Brewing up a storm, brewing up a storm, brewing up inside, and his eyes are wild and it can't go on. He's brewing up a storm. Can't afford to lose touch, can't afford to lose control. The doors are open wide and the wind blows a bitter cold. Man holds a mystery, someone else holds the key. Oh, it's a shame they're the same, the answer doesn't have to be. Brewing up a storm, brewing up a storm, brewing up inside, and his eyes are wild and it can't go on. He's brewing up a storm. In your head, fire in your touch. But I can't chat fire 'cause I love you too much. The race is on, the message is in your soul. As 1,000 thoughts a second now explode. A storm, brewing up a storm, brewing up inside, and his eyes are wild and it can't go on. He's brewing up a storm, brewing up a storm, brewing up inside, and his eyes are wild and it can't go
They say he didn't have an enemy. His was a greatness to behold. He was the last surviving progeny, the last one on this side of the world. He measured a half mile from tip to tail, silver and black, with powerful fins. They say he could split a mountain in two. That's how he got the Grand Canyon. Last great American whale. Last great American whale. Last great American whale. Last great American whale. Some say they saw him at the Great Lakes. Some say they saw him off of Florida. My mother said she saw him in Chinatown. But you can't always trust your mother. Off the Carolinas, the sun shines brightly in the day. The lighthouse glows ghostly there at night. The chief of a local tribe had killed a racist mayor's son. He'd been on death row since 1958. The mayor's kid was a rowdy pig, spit on Indians and lots worse. The old chief buried a hatchet in his head. Life compared to death for him seemed worse. The tribal brothers gathered in the lighthouse to sing and tried to conjure up a storm or rain. The harbor parted, a great whale sprang full up, and caused a huge tidal wave. The wave crushed the jail and freed the chief. The tribe let out a roar. The whites were drowned, the browns and reds set free, but sadly one thing more. Some local yokel member of the NRA kept a bazooka in his living room, and thinking he had the chief in his sights, blew the whale's brains out with a lead harpoon. Let's great American whale. Let's great American whale. Let's great American whale. Let's great American whale. Well, Americans don't care for much of anything. Land and water the least. And animal life is low on the totem pole, with human life not worth more than infected yeast. Americans don't care too much for beauty. They'll shit in a river, dump battery acid in a stream. They'll watch dead rats wash up on the beach, complain if they can't swim. They say things are done for the majority. Don't believe half of what you see, none of what you hear. It's like what my painter friend Donald said to me. Stick a fork in their ass and turn them over, they're done.
And we're back. We're back, and my daughter's just walked in. Ah, well. There'll be some unavoidable background noise for a minute, but never mind. So, I said my show was going to be about in praise of whales, and so far I managed to get myself unbelievably depressed and down because of, well, what we did to them, and the fact that our whole civilization is based on using them up and destroying them. Especially the poor old sperm whale, which really got a kicking. And the right whale, which interestingly is called the right whale because it was the right whale to chase and catch. And the sperm whale, well, there's some very interesting NASA documentation, which I have seen, which is concerning oils and lubrication and space travel. And it is arguably not possible to do the things that NASA do without whale oil, which has some remarkable properties. But coming back anyway to that, let's not talk about what it's good to use their dead bodies for. Let's instead talk about what their living bodies can do. What are they? Who are they? They are the cetaceans. They are marine mammals. They give live birth in the water, and they each of them push their young up to the surface to take its first breath. They all produce milk from breasts very similar to ours, and their breast milk has an interesting adaptation because the whales live in a world where there is no water to drink, and they are mammals. The only water that they can receive in their lifetimes comes from their food. And so pure, unsalinated water is very, very precious in their ecosystem. And their milk has an adaptation to account for this in that the fat level, it's essentially much, much more concentrated than any other milk. There's about 10 times as much fat in whale milk as there is in clotted cream. So, cetaceans, all sorts of sizes of animals, up from blue whale, which I understand can go to 200 tons, right down to dolphins and things. And since the dolphin, let me see, how do I start with this? I'm going to talk about their minds a bit, if you like. And this is a little piece from a bit of research and a book which was published. The book was called Man's Place, Intelligence in Whales, Dolphins and Humans, published by Gollancz Press in London in 1973, and the writers are Carl Erik Fitzelius and Sverre I can't even say the name, Stjolander. These are a pair of, I believe, a Norwegian and a Swede. And this is just something from their book. Since the dolphin employs frequencies 4.5 times higher than the ones we use, its sound-producing apparatus can manage 4.5 times as much information per unit of time. The dolphin appears to have 2 separate sets of sound-producing apparatus, one in each half of its blowhole, and they can be used simultaneously. This means that the dolphin ought to be able to emit 9 times as much information as we can per unit of time. Dolphins can speak 9 times faster than we can. Now, the fact is that when used together, these 2 sets of sound apparatus produce a stereophonic effect. Hey, we got 2 ears too, right? Which ought logically to increase their informational capacity in relation to ours beyond a factor of 9. If we can say that the dolphin can emit 10 times as much physical information via sound as we can, then that is probably an underestimate. And now, from the same book, another piece of this is concerning an experiment over whether or not they think. The question has been raised whether dolphins communicate with each other with the help of something that might be compared to human speech. The following experiment was carried out by Dr. Jarvis Bastian in the United States. A male and a female were presented with 2 keys and a single light. When the light was steady, they were to depress the key on the right, and when it was blinking, the key on the left. If they did it correctly, and if they quickly learned to do so, they were rewarded with a fish. Then, a screen was placed between the animals so that only the female saw the signal light. When the first signal was given, the female swam up to her keys and uttered some dolphin sounds. The male then pressed the correct key of his pair, whereupon the female pressed the correct key on her side. The dolphins could repeat this trick as often as they wanted to. Dr. Bastian, who performed the experiment, is himself very cautious in interpreting the results. I bet he was in 1973. It's long been suspected that porpoises, whales and dolphins talk to one another, and these suspicions are now confirmed by scientific research. Their language is now in the process of being decoded. Dr. John Dreher, a scientist at the Lockheed Aircraft Corporation, gathered the evidence by recording the whistles of these large-brained, small-scale whales whilst they played, exercised and ate. He analysed the whistles and found 18 separate and distinct sound combinations. Of the 18 sound contours, 12 could be assigned ranks as to frequencies of use. Sound contours, phonemes, are the bricks of the edifice of language, ours or any other. The innumerable words of our language are combined with only 26 letters. Dr. Dreher suggests that the whistle contours of the porpoise perhaps stand for syllables. Even with only 18 contours or phonemes, a lot of significant messages or morphemes could be combined. And then, if you go way back, Pliny the Elder, who was writing between 23 and 79 years Anno Domini, after the reputed birth of the reputed Christ and all this calendar nonsense, according to that calendar anyway. And Pliny wrote For a voice, the dolphin has a moaning or a wailing similar to that of a human. A little bit later on, some 350-odd years later, Aristotle wrote, "The voice of the dolphin in air is like that of the human, in that they can pronounce vowels and combinations of vowels, but have difficulties with the consonants." That was written around 350 BC, folks. Earlier, indeed, than Pliny, not later. Aristotle was before Pliny. Please forgive me, showing my ignorance there. So yeah. So I think that we can probably agree that these animals, and I consider myself to be an animal too, so please do not feel that I'm calling them anything bad by calling them animals. I consider all animals to be noble and wonderful beings, and I hope that we can all learn to get along a little bit better. Yeah. So, they're brainy, right? They got big, big brains. They've got old brains. Cetaceans evolved brains the size of ours 30 million years ago. Our brains have only been their present size for approximately 100,000 years. That is 1/300th as long, something like that. A very long, very big difference. 10/30s, yeah. 1/300th as long. So, if you took all the time that humans have had big brains, like ours today, you'd need to stretch that out, multiply it by 300 to get how long the whales have had their big brains, and have occupied 7/10 of the big blue ball we all share, whilst flourishing together in their teeming millions. Once upon a time, before we came along with our factory ships. Oh, I'm getting all bad again. This is not a good show. I'm usually much, much more positive than this. I'm very sorry that this is all very depressing. Praising whales. It's hard to praise them and not to keep going back to the dreadful thing that's happened to them. So I think I might, I've probably covered enough on the subject for the moment. Going to have to change direction and turn this around because we can't carry on down this negative road or we ain't going nowhere. When we stop killing each other because of the type of pattern on a bit of paper, then perhaps the other life forms will have a fighting chance. Yes, Steve, I agree. And squids are horrible, sharp serrated teeth all around, horrible suction cups and wicked lifeless eyes. Sven, I completely agree. I don't want to meet one of them giant squids, mate. They'd be awful. And, have I got anything on their family lives, Sven? Yes, I probably do. That might be a subject for a different show. I was thinking about doing a show on families and to include other animals. And of course the whale is an ideal candidate. What I notice, the animals that I get to see who wed, if you like, as humans do, and form monogamous lifetime relationships are the geese. And they really are quite extraordinarily interesting. They're lovely. So I want to change the subject. Any ideas for some different subject matter? Perhaps someone would be good enough to stick something in the chat box. Blubbergum. Yes, I'm afraid blubbergum, chewing gum was actually first started off as a product for whales. Chewing gum, that started off as a product of whales for sure. In fact, entire hunter-gatherer societies lived in incredible sort of, what shall we say, lived very well considering where they lived, just because occasionally they took a whale. One a year, sort of, was enough for the Inuit folk who live where there is only snow and sea. And in a landscape of just snow and sea, these people could do more than just be if they took the odd whale. The whale was material for houses, fuel for lamps, food for a very long time, etc., etc. Okay, talk about the People's Weekend and what I hope to do there. I may or may not make it down to the event, the People's Weekend, Failing a Fubble, in the Mill House in somewhere near Rosscray, I think. Someone post the link in the chat box. But it does sound like it's going to be a great fun weekend. The reason why I'm sitting here sweating without my shirt on is there are a very large number of trees local to me here that need my personal attention. And over the next 12 weeks, I'm going to have to give them all personal attention. There's 48,000 of them, and I've only managed to visit about 300 so far. So I was doing that all day. So I know I'm going to play a tune. What's the point in having loads of music if you don't play it when you're running to a dead stop and want to change something?
And it's because we love our children, we'd move mountains to fulfill them. And if anything should kill them, we'd go mad. But though our bodies feel half dead, we'll join the Monday morning treadmill to give them the time we haven't time to have. Which doesn't leave much time for learning how this little wheel we're turning, earning dosh to buy those Mino-likey shoes. Turns all the cogwheels in progression, gearing down to where oppression grinds the kiddies we all pity on the news. When from the sweet shop to the sweatshop's just a 2-hour easy jet stop for the holiday our families deserve. And though we know our world is sinking from this fossil fuel we're drinking still, we guess it's their best interest we serve. Seems only yesterday they're teething, then they're standing up and leaving, saying how they're gonna sing a different song. And though you really hope they may, you guess they'll briefly seize a day, then have their own kids on the way before too long. Then we'll drive over after school and take our grandkids to the pool, stop off at Tesco's to refuel, 'cause it's so cheap. And in the back they'll chatter on about a world already gone, while we digest the latest weather news. And we, in every person, every place, a joy no other can replace, to see the smile on kiddies' faces while they play. So every Christmas we must buy the latest gizmo out of China, flown here through a sky we broke and threw away. Like there's a little kid inside us, hurt by all the love denied us, thinks a new toy can provide us with a cure. When what we need is to spit the dummy, cry for daddy, cry for mummy, wipe our eyes and recognize we're more mature. And if the best that we can give them is a place that's safe to live, it's time to roll our shirt sleeves up and not deny. You know it's time to change that nappy when the bottom line's so crappy. That because we love our children, children die.
Click. Oh, I nearly got caught out there. We were talking about root barriers. It seems the subject has properly been changed. Root barriers, indeed. And hedging. Hedging. Well, I've been in the trees all day, so let's have a go about hedging. I like mixed hedges best. And when it comes to any soil in any position, very often there's a large variety of different hedging plants that will go well. I think that monoculture hedges cause all sorts of problems for the local microclimate and for the local microsystems or micro-ecosystems as well. A mixed hedge is much more beneficial for all the other life in your garden. One long line of laurel, just laurel, well, I'm afraid that's only probably going to benefit a very small number of life that lives on laurel. And worse again if it's a plant that's imported from abroad, which is not occurring naturally, if you like, on our land here. And it's got a monoculture of it long. Well, in those sorts of life tend not to have very little interdependent life in Ireland, in our gardens. And so they're fine, one or two, mixed in to diversity, but they're not fine in long lines of exactly the same thing. You know what I mean? But that's just my opinion. So a heavy clay soil hedge, Steve. Don't neglect the whitethorn. Just stick in everything that will grow in your heavy clay soil, essentially, in a line, one after the other. Most of the hardwood trees, if you like, will retain their leaves for quite a long time throughout the winter if you want to make the hedge into a barrier. But beech is noted for its retention of leaves all winter. So I'd put a beech component in there, although it's not a native, as I suggested earlier. It's only been here around 350 or 400 years, but there are now a number of life forms that interdepend nicely with the beech tree, so he's not so bad. And if you mix it in with a bit of oak and sycamore and maybe mix up the beech copper and green and mix up the oak with evergreen oak and the kind of oak that loses its leaves, I would be talking about Holland oak there, which would be a suitable evergreen oak for a hedge. In fact, it's a very good hedging plant. And they're available very cheaply from forestry supply companies. I said, what's the name of the crowd below? And I can't think of it now. Anyway, if you just Google tree nurseries in Ireland, you'll find them. And I'd say you could buy 100 evergreen oak plants for probably, 200 quid or something. There is another company down there, somewhat more expensive, but the plants are perhaps better quality, and they certainly have a much wider variety of choices, and that would be Future Forest down in Cork. The name of the commercial nursery that I was thinking of escapes me, but very often your local garden centre is as good a source of plants as any anyway. I'm just pausing here to drink some water. It's still extraordinarily hot. Quite a nice warm summer we're having this year. It's lovely. So hedging. What else about hedges should we say? Doesn't really matter what time of the year you establish them. Although they're best established in the winter when the plants are dormant. But because it's a hedge and because you can take a lot of care with planting each plant, you can get away with planting a hedge pretty much any time you want. I've seen them planted as late as May and survive. And I've seen them planted as early as late August and survive. Perhaps midsummer might not be the best time to plant, so you might be waiting a while before you plant your hedge, Steve. And root barriers, which is something that not many people seem to know. It's quite common to use a root barrier in your garden to stop plants from spreading from one area to another. And my own particular favourite, easy to get hold of root barrier is 8-inch wide plastic DPC that's sold for buildings. It's a nice stiff plastic, and all you need to do is dig a trench, more than 18 inches deep, about 20 inches deep. Dig around a 20-inch trench, put the plastic in along one side of the trench and fill the trench in. And that should contain the roots of most plants within the area that you sort of fence off, if you like. It's often done with figs and things. A couple of other garden plants that like their roots sort of all constrained. And often done to protect buildings as well, which is where I would have come across doing it in the past. So it's very nice in the forest at the moment. It's a pleasure to hear the hum. And it's been extraordinarily late in arriving this summer. But there's a a background hum here today it's really loud. It's this in the background. It's all the insects, and they're all very, very busy at the moment trying to catch up on lost time, I think. And I do notice that numbers of bees this year are very, very far down on what we've seen in the past. The sycamore just outside the house here, which would be in flower, just finished flowering now. But that would normally, at this time of the year, have been producing a loud droning hum for at least the last month and a half or so. But this year there was very little hum from the tree. And something else that's interesting that I've noticed out in the forest is I've noticed some disoriented wasps. Now this is not something that I've seen before and I don't understand it. But I have noticed some disoriented wasps kicking around the place. Walking around muddled, doing sort of wiggly lines and stopping and then going back on themselves and falling over. And so I've seen this a number of times, both inside the house, in the garden and in the forest this year. So I if anyone knows anything further on disoriented wasps, I'd be very interested in... I want to figure out what's happening to the poor beggars, you know. And if anyone else has any interest or has noticed it for themselves or perhaps has any clues to offer what could be happening to our wasps. I don't think they're very beneficial to me personally, like I got stung on the knee by one the other day. But clearly they must be good for something or I wouldn't still be here, so we got to look after them along with everything else, bees included. And of course, it could be something similar to the bees, we don't know. It may be the case that having replaced one of the pesticides that was upsetting bees, we're now upsetting wasps. Just an idea. I don't know, we'll have to wait and see. If anyone else is interested, and anyone else has any information to offer, I'd be a happy recipient. So, let's just say a little bit about what we're doing in the forest at the moment. It's called... if you like, thinning and tending, and having planted lots and lots and lots of trees so that the land gets utilised quickly in terms of getting full tree cover quickly. It's now the time to take the twisted ones, the bent ones, the awkward ones, all the ones out, create some growing room essentially, and select the ones we're taking out. It's a lot of work. But hey, it's a lot better than sitting on your rear end doing nothing, right? Going to have some more music. I haven't really picked anything out. I had thought that I was going to get away with whales for a long time, but I find that as soon as I start to think about the poor whales, I end up just going off on this raving rant, which is basically a whinge fest and going nowhere. So I'm having to change direction here.
As I roved out on a bright May morning to view the meadows and flowers gay, whom should I spy but my own true lover, as she sat under yon willow tree. I took off my hat and I did salute her. I did salute her courageously. When she turned around, sure the tears fell from her. saying, false young man, you have deluded me. A diamond ring I own I gave you, a diamond ring to wear on your right hand, but the vows you made, love, you went and broke them, and married the lassie that had the land. If I married the lassie that had the land, my love, it's that I'll rue until the day I die. When misfortune falls, sure no man can shun it. I was blindfolded, I'll ne'er deny. And at nights when I go to my bed of slumber, the thoughts of my true love run in my mind. When I turn around to embrace my darling, instead of gold, sure 'tis brass I find. And I wish the Queen would call home her army from the West Indies, America and Spain, and every man to his wedded woman, in hopes that you and I will meet again.
And so we come to the subject of slow gin, it seems. There are some here who really, really understand the world, it seems. I noticed that Nimble has posted in the chat box after the first frost has split them. Yep, that's one way. And it's probably the right way. If you were going to make sloe gin, I suggest that harvesting the sloes just after the first frost has split the sloes is probably exactly the right time to make sloe gin. There's other ways, of course. The usual recipe is to take an equal, if you like, volume of sloes and gin and sugar and put them together in a jar, and you want the skins of the sloes pricked. The way it was done here, we'd sit there and just stick a pin in every sloe and drop it into the jar until the jar was full of sloes. And then we'd trickle sugar into the jar and knock it down until the sloes in the jar were nearly full of sugar. And then out of the cupboard would come the little treasured bottle of the good stuff, if you like. Not gin, I'm afraid, but a clear white liquid very similar to gin. And the bottle will be topped up and stuck on the shelf. And the Christmas 12-month after that is when it had come out, usually on Stephen's Day. Thick, purple, rich, and strong, and gorgeous. Sloe gin is just lovely. It's great stuff. There's all sorts of different drinks and stuff you can make, and it's really right on the subject of trees, which is one of my favourites. I do live in the forest, after all. So, yeah, sloe gin. There you go, another argument for trees. We couldn't have sloe gin if we didn't have trees. Famously, gin. Gin is flavoured with juniper berries, and guess what? Juniper's another tree. There you go. Elderflower, elderberries. In fact, an awful lot of our most treasured beverages come from trees, now that I think of it. We make wines from the saps of many trees: oak, birch, maple. We make wine from the fruits of many trees. We flavour things with their bark and with their flowers and with their berries, and we eat their nuts. And we stand in their shade on hot sunny days. And we go and shelter amongst them from the wind and the rain. Yeah, trees are where it's at on the land, guys. And I suggest that perhaps the whales may be where it's at on the oceans. There are still humans killing whales, whilst it's clear to me and clear to nearly everybody I speak to that most of the humans on the planet think it's wrong, but there are still humans killing whales. I suggest we humans might be able to find a way, some slightly better way, to organise ourselves, Here we are in this situation where most of us, when asked about it, will say, oh no, we shouldn't be killing whales, Nearly everyone would say that. They got bigger brains than we do, and they're noble, beautiful mammals. No, we shouldn't be killing whales. But there are still some of us who go out there in these whaling ships, and there's other brave men who go out there in other ships to oppose those whaling ships, and some folk will even go to extraordinary lengths, to prevent whales from being killed. And still they're killing the whales. We've got something broken. There's something broken in our system, where even in a situation like the situation where we're at with the whales right now, even in a situation where most of the humans on the planet believe we shouldn't be doing it and we're still doing it, and we haven't been able to change it, it doesn't make sense to me. I mean, apparently they're all democracies, right? That means the majority chooses. So in the case of the whales, if the democracy were actually apparent and true, then we wouldn't be killing the whales because, more than 50% of the folks on the planet don't think that we should be killing the whales. It's often said that whales don't have a natural enemy. I suggest they do. We are the natural enemy of the whale. In fact, it is often apparent to me that the civilization itself is the natural enemy of all the other life on the planet. Whereas, of course, individual humans are not. But the civilization itself is. Individual humans, well, they all, pretty much all of them, they can get all fluffy and soft in the heart about puppies or kittens or goldfish or frogs or newts or snakes or puffins or whales or dolphins or polar bears or penguins or some other cute animal like that, or lions indeed, or elephants or hippopotamuses or tigers or dodos or passenger pigeons. We can all be like individually. We all do care about other life forms. But as a group, as an effective culture that acts, we don't behave that way. As an effective culture that acts, it's apparent to me that we are the enemy of all life. We cut down forests, leave deserts behind us and poison everything we touch. It's time for it to stop. It's time for it to stop. You see, at this stage I haven't even got children. Well, it all started a long time ago. 1979, 1980, thereabouts. 78, 79, around then. Before I ever had children. In fact, you could say at the time I was a child myself. That was when I first started to notice and care about these things. And then, now after some 26 years of raising children, and having grandchildren at this stage, I have the only substantive change that I have seen is an acceleration of the destruction. I have witnessed a few small token victories, supposedly, apparently. But the general run of things is an acceleration of the destruction. Just think about that when you next open your fridge. It's a good time to think about these things when you next open your fridge. So yeah, where was I? What was I talking about? Oh yeah, our children and our civilization and what we're doing to things and how can we stop? Well, for a start, every time you open your fridge, just have a little think about some aspect of what you're doing right there, right then. In the house that more than likely you didn't build. Opening an appliance that almost certainly you didn't build and quite likely you don't understand how it works. And quite likely you couldn't produce the energy to run it without some outside help. And as you reach inside for food that you didn't hunt for, or even grow yourself, just think about that. Think about what your animal body is for. What is your animal body for? I suggest, at least, this is what I think my animal body is for. I think my animal body is a tool for flourishing with. That's what it's for. It's a tool for making things better around me and having a good time on account of making things better around me. Thriving and flourishing. That's what my body's for. So, for all the years that I used my body to earn euro notes, making microprocessors in a slave corporation, where every 6 months we used to stab each other in the back by writing things called brag sheets, where we boasted about our own good qualities in the jobs and offered constructive criticism for our peers every 6 months in order to qualify for a pay rise. Whilst I was doing that, I think I was doing the wrong thing with my body. In fact, I'm sure I was. Really sure I was. At the time, I was operating some 56 sputtering machines. Various different times of the day on my own and with others. Some of the time in one of the bays I was only in charge of 8 or 10 or 12 of these machines, depositing thin films of metal on flakes of silicone to make the devices like the one I'm using now to speak to you guys. Up near Dublin somewhere, a place called Leaklip it was. And each one of these machines used about as much electricity as around 22 houses, I understand. And there were some 56 of these machines. And those machines run 24/7, 365 days a year, some of them when it's busy. I don't think I was using my body for flourishing with whilst I was doing that. In fact, when I hop into the car and I drive to Athlone, I don't think I'm using my body for flourishing with when I'm doing that either. I might be much closer to be using my body properly and flourishing if I were to hop on my bicycle and cycle to Athlone. That might be a better thing to do. And the difference is not much. 'Tis 15 or 18 minutes away by car, or an hour and 15 or so away by bicycle. Do you know what I mean? What is your body for? So the next time you're opening the fridge anyway, I'd encourage us all to have a little think about what is your animal body for. Never mind the mind bit for the moment, just think about the animal bit. The id bit. The bit that's full of, that does things by itself, you know, the bit that likes to be warm and comfortable and well fed and caressed occasionally by a lover, or to caress a child, or to hug other animal bodies. That bit. What's that bit for? The thinking bit is only for confusing yourself with sometimes, you know. What you feel in your physical self and what you feel in your mental self can be completely different. You can be sitting beautifully fed, warm and comfortable in an apparent paradise and be experiencing the most extraordinary mental anguish. Or you can be sitting naked and starving on a tropical beach and be experiencing nirvana. And anywhere in between. Anywhere in between. So I suggest our bodies are a tool for flourishing with, and flourishing don't include killing whales, in my opinion. The whales are noble creatures, in my opinion. If I were forced to choose an idol to worship, if you like, from amongst the life on earth, of course I would not choose. I would choose to not choose in those circumstances. But however, if I were forced to choose, a whale would seem to be a good choice. You know? So they got this wonderful tonal language, they got this wonderful big brains, and they were there in their emotions flourishing for a very, very long time. Something else I should say in praise of the whales before I go is, you know, we humans farm, and whales breathe air, just as we do. And the baleen whales are the ones with the baleen in their mouths, the ones with this big, long, stringy, furry thing hanging in their mouths, those baleen whales. Well, they live on tiny, microscopic organisms. And those microscopic, tiny organisms on the surfaces of the seas around 7/10 of the globe are the ones that are responsible for producing the lion's share of the oxygen that all mammals and insects breathe. And these huge cetaceans with their massive brains who eat these organisms are largely farming and controlling that atmospheric oxygen production. At least they were, until we killed them all a short time ago. Or so nearly all of them as makes no difference. Let's take a nation like our nation. There's only 10 minutes left. And let's imagine that some outside entity decided that some part of our bodies was good for something, and it was going to come and start slaughtering us. And it came to the land, this land, and started pulling away bodies and pulling away bodies, and there was nothing we could do about it, just the same way as the whales had nothing that they could do about it. And let's imagine that our population had been reduced to 1,000th of its current population. In other words, only 1 in 1,000 of us had survived. How much of our culture would we have left? How much of our music would we have left? How much of our language would we have left? How much of our knowledge would we have left? And how much of ourselves would we have left? 4.5 million people divide by 1,000. What do you get? You just rub away the last 3 zeros, don't you? And you end up with 45,000 people, the population of a small town, and not a neurosurgeon amongst them. Do you see what I mean? We'd have lost everything. This is the situation that the whale finds itself in today, and it's a situation of our making. And I suggest if we carry along on the path we're going on, we humans may find that karma catches up with us. And we end up in the same situation. And our 7 billion become 7 million. Or worse still, 7,000. Or perhaps just 70. Or maybe none at all. It all depends on what we all believe is right and true about the world. Yes, whale meat. Indeed, the Japanese have a diet too. It's not just for the meat they want to kill them. It's not just for the meat they want to kill them. In fact, the meat is just a side issue. I'm going to play a few tunes and drop the stream. Different types of whales have different diets. Yes, they do. Some of them eat giant squid. There are basically whales that eat meat and whales that eat plankton, essentially. That's the way it goes as far as I can make out. Some of them eat seals, you know.
Carry you over a stormy sea, whispering things as they caress you. Gently they'll press you, with sweet words undress you. Will you lie in the land that holds and keeps you, or the land you love the best? The land you love the best. The land you love the best. Will you lie in the garden of peace and order, or the cold wild field in the west? When night and her shadows come to surround you, to touch you with fingers of cold, cold fear, when the voice of the stranger echoes around you, when strange words confound you, strange accents drown you, will you fly to the land that fed you and found you, or the land you love the best? The land you love the best. The land you love the best. Will you lie in the garden of peace and order, or the cold wild field in the west? angels with wings come to collect you, to carry you over a stormy sea, whispering things as they caress you. Gently they'll press you, with sweet words undress you. Will you lie in the land that holds and keeps you, or the land you love the best? The land you love the best. The land you love the best. Will you lie in the garden of peace and order, or the cold wild field in the west? The land you love the best. The land you love the best. Will you lie in the garden of peace and order, or the cold